Hi, I'm Evelyn. 2 weeks ago, my sister screamed at me in front of our parents. "You've ruined our lives." And they nodded like it was true. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just walked out with nothing but my bag and silence. I couldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break down. But this morning, I woke up to 14 missed calls. Now they say they need me. So what changed? Before we dive in, what time are you listening to this and where from? Drop a comment because maybe you've been erased too until they realized they needed the one they discarded. The feeling of being invisible until you're useful is something I know all too well. It was already dark outside, but the air inside the house felt even heavier, pressing against my chest with each breath. My sister Claire sat perfectly perched on the edge of the family's oversized cream sectional, her ring light glowing like a halo around her, illuminating her flawless makeup and practiced smile. She was finishing a live stream, something about hitting 50,000 followers on social media. My parents sat nearby, nodding along like she'd just gotten her PhD. Margaret beamed with pride while Richard scrolled through his phone, occasionally glancing up with an approving nod. I stood in the doorway between the kitchen and the living room, clutching a chipped mug of tea I'd reheated twice, the warmth barely reaching my fingers. My name hadn't been mentioned once in the past hour. That wasn't surprising. The familiar ache of being forgotten settled in my stomach. I had become an expert at blending into the background, making myself small and unobtrusive. Sometimes I wondered if the walls noticed me more than they did. I traced the texture of the doorframe with my fingertips, feeling more connected to it than to the people just feet away. Then it happened. The laptop screen flickered, and Claire's voice jumped half an octave, cutting through my thoughts. "Oh my God, not now." Her perfectly curated smile dropped instantly. "Why does this always happen when you're around?" She snapped, her voice cutting across the room and slicing right through me like a cold knife. I blinked, stunned by the sudden attack, my chest tightening. "What, you stress me out just by breathing, Evelyn? You throw off my vibe." "My engagement drops every time you're in the background." I looked around, half expecting anyone to call that out for what it was. Ridiculous. But instead, my mother stood up, brushing invisible lint off her lap, her pearl bracelet catching the light. "She's not wrong," Margaret said calmly, her voice steady but cutting. "Every time something good happens for Claire, you find a way to ruin it. You've ruined her life. Honestly, you've ruined ours too. The family dynamic has never been the same." My father didn't say a word. He just rubbed the bridge of his nose like this was all too familiar, too exhausting. I felt the flush rise in my neck, hot and spreading. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even defend myself. My throat closed around words that wouldn't have mattered anyway. Instead, I turned around, my fingers gripping the mug so tightly I feared it might shatter. I walked down the hall to the guest bedroom they'd begrudgingly let me use while I figured things out. The door barely closed without sticking. The carpet smelled faintly of dust and air freshener that had long expired. I moved quietly, robotically, stuffing a few essentials into a backpack I hadn't touched since graduate school. I didn't pack anything sentimental. No framed photos, no cards, no letters. I'd stopped writing those years ago when I realized no one read them. My journals, my teaching materials, and my laptop were all I needed. 15 minutes later, I was out the door. No one asked where I was going. No one asked if I'd be back. The street was quiet. The kind of silence that follows the kind of fight where words hit harder than fists. My footsteps sounded too loud on the pavement. I walked down 2 blocks to the gas station with the humming fluorescent lights that made my skin look sickly and pale. I bought a granola bar and a bottle of water, mostly out of habit, not hunger. My stomach was too knotted to feel anything but anxiety. I asked the clerk if the bus was still running. "Last one's in 8 minutes, if he's on time." He wasn't, but I waited anyway. Sitting on the cold metal bench with my hands shoved in my coat pockets and my backpack between my legs like a life raft, the only thing keeping me from drowning. When the bus did show, I climbed on and didn't look back. The ride into downtown Charlotte felt longer than it was. I kept my head down, watching the city lights blur past like smudged paint, each color bleeding into the next. No one made eye contact. It was almost a comfort. When we reached the end of the line, I got off and walked a few blocks to a small beige motel with flickering neon signage, the buzz of electricity creating a soundtrack to my solitude. The kind of place you only go if you've run out of better options or better people. The man at the front desk didn't ask questions. His indifference was a blessing. He handed me a key with a number scratched off and rewritten in marker. "Cash or card?" he mumbled, eyes never leaving his reality show playing behind him. I handed over my last $42, the bills feeling too thin between my fingers. The room smelled like old cigarettes and cleaning fluid that didn't quite mask anything. I dropped my backpack near the foot of the bed and sat on the edge of the mattress. It creaked beneath me, loud in the quiet. I didn't undress. I didn't cry. I just stared at the water stain in the ceiling above me, my mind racing with everything and nothing. It looked like a broken heart or a burned-out star, depending on how you tilted your head. The metaphor wasn't lost on me. My phone sat face down on the nightstand. I hadn't heard a single buzz the entire time. No, where are you? No, come home. Nothing. And then it vibrated. Just once. I reached for it, half hopeful, half numb. A notification popped up. Reminder unopened Mother's Day gift from Evelyn delivered 2 years ago. The box I'd mailed her wrapped in tissue paper. A pair of silk handkerchiefs with her initials. I had them monogrammed, spent 3 hours picking the perfect design. She never opened it. They never opened me. The truth of that realization sat heavy in my chest, making it hard to breathe. The next morning, I was up before the sun finished rising, watching the sky turn from grey to pale blue through the thin curtains. I counted what I had left, $270 and some change. No job, no home. But something about that note made the math feel less like a countdown and more like a challenge. A fire sparked inside me. I walked toward downtown. My feet ached before I reached the corner gas station, but I kept going, each step fueled by determination rather than direction. A little cafe near the bus depot opened early and had a small chalkboard sign out front, free Wi-Fi, coffee refills all day. That was all I needed. Inside, it smelled like burnt toast and floor cleaner. But it was warm and busy enough that I could blend in. I ordered the smallest coffee on the menu, $1.75, and took the seat closest to the outlet, treasuring this small corner of possibility. I pulled out my phone and logged into a few freelance tutoring platforms I had bookmarked years ago, but never used. One of them still had an old profile saved. I updated it, my fingers moving quickly across the screen. Specializing in Saturn Act prep, writing support, study planning, patient, reliable. Under About Me, I wrote, I believe in showing up even when no one else does. The words felt both vulnerable and powerful on the screen. By noon, I had applied to 16 listings, parents desperate for help with test scores. Students overwhelmed by college pressure, people I could understand in ways my own family never tried to understand me. The rejection I'd felt for years transformed into motivation, pushing me forward with each application. Halfway through the 5th application, I paused. The words reliable, compassionate listener stared back at me from the bio section. I remembered Grandma Eleanor's voice, warm and certain. You were always the one who listened, Evelyn. That's a rare gift. She used to say that when I sat at her feet during Sunday dinners, while everyone else talked over one another, she saw something in me that no one else bothered to look for. The memory of her hand on my shoulder felt so real I almost reached up to touch it. Not flashy, not loud, but something real. I swallowed hard, thinking back to the funeral. We were standing in the reception hall, surrounded by polite people with bad coleslaw. A family friend I barely knew leaned in gently and said, Your grandmother's second letter was beautiful. I hope it brought you peace. Her eyes were kind in a way that made my chest ache. Second letter? I blinked at her, confusion washing over me. I only got one. Her face fell, confused. Oh, I must have been mistaken. She said she wrote you another 8 months before she passed. I'm sure it got to you, but it never did. And when I asked my mother about it 3 days after the funeral, still trying to give her the benefit of the doubt, she didn't even blink. Just kept arranging flowers in a vase like I'd asked about the weather. Oh, it wasn't anything important. Just sweet old lady things, she dismissed, not meeting my eyes. Just sweet old lady things. That letter, too, had been erased, like I had been. A pattern so long and subtle, you don't notice it until you wake up one day and realize all your edges have been sanded down by people who said they loved you. The thought made my coffee taste bitter. I shook the memory off and refocused on my applications, straightening my back and taking a deep breath. A ding came in. One parent responded, then another. By the end of the week, I had 3 clients. 2 high schoolers and 1 adult learner prepping for a GED. The library 2 blocks from the cafe. Allowed guests to borrow Chromebooks for online sessions. I booked 2-hour slots every afternoon and used them like my life depended on it. Because it did. I prepared lessons until midnight, customizing materials for each student. The pay wasn't much, but every dollar felt earned, every cent a validation. And the students, they listened. They asked questions. They said thank you. One girl named Zoe said during our second session, "You're the only person who's explained this in a way that makes sense." Her smile lit up the screen and something in me unclenched for the first time in years. It felt strange being seen by strangers in ways I'd never been seen at home. Their gratitude was like water after a drought, and I drank it in greedily. That evening, I returned to the motel and recorded my income on the back of the same receipt from when I checked in. I wrote down the tutoring hours, the payments I'd received on PayPal, and how much I could afford to spend next 2 more nights. I looked around that tiny room. It smelled faintly of bleach and damp curtains. But it was mine for now, and that was enough. For the first time, I didn't feel like a visitor in my own space. For the first time in years, I felt the slightest threat of pride uncoil in my chest, warming me from within. They never noticed what I was building. I said aloud to no one, my voice stronger than I expected, because they never thought I could. I traced the edges of my laptop, feeling the potential it contained. It wasn't just bitterness. It was clarity, cold and clean, washing away years of doubt. I lay down, still wearing my jeans, my mind too active for sleep. The motel buzzed with faint conversations through the wall and the whir of a vending machine outside. A strange symphony of strangers' lives intersecting briefly. Just as I was about to put my phone on silent, a post popped up on my feed. "Family is who shows up when it matters. Don't ever forget that." It was Claire's caption. Her face gleamed next to our mother's, both holding glasses of something bubbly, their smiles too wide to be genuine. I barely registered the fake smiles before my eyes locked onto something behind them. A photo on the wall that sent a jolt through my body. The family portrait, but I wasn't in it. I stared at the photo, my thumb instinctively zooming in, my eyes locked on the familiar hallway wall. Same textured beige, same soft shadow from the hallway lamp. But the frame was different. Gone was the old family portrait we took when I was 16. Back when everyone still pretended I belonged, when I still believed I did. In its place, a glossy new photo. Claire in the center, of course, perfect in her designer dress. Mom on one side beaming in her cream cardigan, hand placed just so on Claire's shoulder. Dad stiff but smiling as if coached, his expensive watch visible. Even the dog, Sprout, the golden retriever they got after I moved out, sat proudly in front. It looked like a campaign ad for some Hallmark version of our family. Only I wasn't in it. I'd been replaced by empty air, as if I'd never existed at all. Not a mention, not a trace, just a clean, cheerful slice of life trimmed to remove the messy parts. I didn't cry. I thought maybe I would, but all I felt was a slow rising heat in my chest. Not sadness, not quite rage either. Something quieter, heavier, like watching someone throw away a letter before reading it, and realizing it was yours. My hands trembled slightly as I set the phone down. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, the phone still glowing in my hand. A few years back, I might have told myself they probably just needed a smaller frame. Or maybe they didn't realize I'd notice. I would have made excuses for them, shrinking myself even further. But not this time. This wasn't an accident. It was official. I'd been erased. Not metaphorically, not emotionally, physically. The evidence stared back at me from the screen. I scrolled back to other photos on Claire's page. Throwback to the good old days. Family dinner last Sunday, grateful for my tribe. There I was, always barely in frame or cropped out entirely. And now I was just gone. A wave of memory pulled me under. I was 9, standing on a stool so I wouldn't be too short for the group photo at church. My heart raced with excitement to be included. Everyone laughed when Claire joked. Evelyn always looks like she photobombed us. That time, Mom did defend me, kind of. She said, "She's just shy. That's all." But they moved me to the end of the lineup anyway. Out of frame was easier. I remember the heat of shame burning my cheeks as I was shuffled aside. I blinked away the memory and reached for my tote bag, needing to distract myself from the knot forming in my throat. I began organizing my tutoring inquiries, replying to students, filtering messages. My hands moved mechanically, finding comfort in order and purpose. It was busy work until I opened the spam folder. There it was, a subject line I nearly missed. Re-family podcast opportunity sent by Claire. I had been CC'd, probably by mistake. My stomach clenched into a tight ball of dread. I opened it. A short professional note to a PR rep pitching an episode featuring modern family dynamics through the lens of resilience and social media influence. The excitement lapped off the screen in every exclamation point. And then at the bottom, my sister. She's just bitter and emotionally unstable. We don't talk for a reason. I don't want her involved. It's taken years to rebuild the family's image. The words slammed into me like physical blows, each one landing with precision. My hand tightened around the phone until my knuckles turned white. I could hear the ringing in my ears, drowning out everything else. I reread the line 3 times, each word louder than the last. Bitter. Unstable. Rebuild. The labels she'd assigned me without my consent burned into my brain. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, I took a screenshot. Then another, evidence mounting in my digital arsenal. Then I printed the email from the library the next morning and taped it on the motel wall right next to Grandma's letter. The words sat side by side like a before and after. One believed I could build. The other believed I didn't matter enough to be seen. The contrast was stark and undeniable. I grabbed a pen. On the motel notepad, I started mapping it all out. Dates, comments, moments, the slow eraser. The dismissals, the behind-the-back insults that had finally come out in writing. My handwriting was steady even as emotions churned inside me. It didn't feel petty anymore. It felt necessary, like I was reclaiming pieces of myself with each word. Later that week, a message popped up from a Dallas-based SAT prep group. They'd reviewed my profile and wanted to onboard me for virtual sessions. $75 per student, a number I hadn't seen in years. It meant I could stop living off dollar coffee and hope. My heart leaped at the opportunity, though my face remained calm. I accepted the offer without celebration. No jumping, no smiling, just a steady kind of satisfaction that spread through my chest like warm honey. The kind that stays quiet because it doesn't need to be seen. By Friday evening, I had enough to put down for a small room in a shared apartment a few miles out. Not a palace, but something with a door that locked and no blinking neon sign outside. I sat on the bed, tracing the edge of the email with my thumb, feeling the future take shape. I wasn't angry anymore. I was awake. There's a difference. Anger clouds, but awakening clarifies. A knock on the motel door startled me out of my thoughts. Sharp, hesitant. I stood slowly and opened it, cautious but curious. There she was, Sophia, my former best friend. Her face looked thinner, tired, with dark circles under her eyes. She clutched something in her hands, something wrapped in an old dish towel like it had been hidden. "Evelyn," she said softly, her voice catching. "They told me you were in trouble. I didn't believe them until I saw this." I stepped aside to let Sophia in, and she hesitated like she didn't belong. Like crossing that threshold meant betraying someone. Her eyes darted around the room, taking in my temporary home. She held out a small envelope, the kind I used to buy in bulk from that stationery shop near the library. The familiar paper made my heart skip. My name was written on it in my own handwriting. Soft, rounded letters I hadn't used in months. My chest tightened, making it difficult to breathe. "It's still sealed," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Evelyn, I found it in your mum's desk under a stack of expired coupons." Her face showed a mixture of shock and sympathy that made me feel both seen and exposed. I didn't reach for it right away. I just stared, processing what this meant. "I wasn't snooping," she said quickly, setting it gently on the little table by the microwave. "I was dropping off something for Claire. Margaret had me waiting in the kitchen, and it was sitting there like it meant nothing. I recognized your handwriting immediately." I finally picked it up, feeling the weight of hope I'd once placed inside. The envelope hadn't been torn or wrinkled. It looked exactly like it did when I walked it to the mailbox last year, my mother's birthday. I'd saved up for weeks just to load a gift card to her favorite cafe and wrote a letter inside about second chances, about trying again, about maybe healing. She never opened it, never even bothered to see what I had to say. Sophia sat down across from me, perching on the edge of the chair. Her mouth opened like she wanted to say more but didn't. I slid a fingernail under the flap. The paper peeled back without resistance. I pulled out the card and the note, unfolded the soft pink sheet, my heart pounding in my ears. "Mom, if there's still a space in your heart for me, I'd like to sit there again. Not asking for everything, just a callback. I miss our Tuesday talks. I miss you. Love, Evelyn." I read it twice. Then I folded it back. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My throat closed around words that wouldn't come. Even the words I sent them didn't matter. Not enough to open. Not even enough to throw away. Just tucked under coupons and forgotten. Like a scratch-off that didn't win. The metaphor was painfully apt. Sophia finally spoke, breaking the heavy silence. That wasn't all I found. She reached into her tote and slid a few printed pages across the table, her fingers trembling slightly. Claire's new site, the Success Academy, or whatever she's calling it. I used to help you build this stuff, remember? I'd know your voice anywhere. I'd recognize your work blindfolded. I scanned the first page, then the next, my heart pounding harder with each familiar phrase. My breath caught in my throat. She'd lifted it all. The intro text, the diagnostic rubric I'd spent months refining, even my diagrams. The same layout, same color palette, only now it was under Claire's name, her photos, her brand. The theft was so complete it was almost impressive. She said you gave it to her, Sophia added quickly, her voice tight with anger. I knew that was a lie. You would never just hand over your curriculum. I laughed. One of those short, breathless sounds that die before they reach your throat. Even my sidebars, I muttered, running my finger over the familiar formatting. Even the section headers. My voice shook, but I stayed still, like movement would let the betrayal crack wider, would let it consume me entirely. Sophia sat quietly while I took it in, her presence a comfort I hadn't realized I needed. A few hours later she left, hugging me tightly, then slipping out the door with tears in her eyes. The room was quiet again. I sat on the floor, my back against the cheap wood-panelled wall, feeling both hollow and strangely full. No music, no TV, just the hum of the mini fridge and the occasional creak of the pipes. Then came the buzz. The phone screen lit up. Missed call, Dad, then another. And another. I watched as the count ticked up to 14, the screen flashing with urgency. Voicemails followed. I didn't listen at first, but curiosity peeled me open just enough. The last one was from my father, his usually distant voice now strained. His voice was weary. Evelyn, your sister's getting dragged all over the internet. Some blog picked up the story. They're calling it plagiarism. People are mad. She's saying you're lying, but we need your help to calm it down. She's not handling it well. No hello, no how are you? No apology, no acknowledgement, just the usual pattern. We need you when it burns. I didn't answer. I didn't even text back. I just sat there, phone on my lap, screen still lit, then dark, then lit again. The buzz felt like a mosquito at the edge of sleep. Persistent, nagging, never letting up. My fingertips tingled with the urge to respond, an old habit I refused to indulge. They only ever call, I whispered to the silence, my voice echoing in the empty room. When I can fix what they broke. The truth of it settled into my bones. My arms felt heavy with exhaustion. I leaned forward, resting my forehead on my knees. I hadn't cried yet, but this wasn't tears. This was something slower, sadder. A grief for what never was and never would be. I opened my laptop, hovered over my folder marked Curriculum Archive. My finger tapped the delete key. Maybe I should just let it go. Erase it all like they tried to erase me. But then I noticed something that made my heart stop. A folder I hadn't touched in years. Grandma Legal. I clicked, my breath catching. Inside was a scan I barely remembered uploading, an image file labeled Will Evelyn JPG. I opened it with trembling hands. There it was, clear as day. My grandmother's signature. Her handwriting. A clause stating that I, Evelyn Parker, was the sole recipient of her educational materials. All her curriculum, tutoring designs, and teaching frameworks. The words jumped off the screen, Eleanor's final gift to me. I was the legal heir to the very work Claire had stolen. And it had been scanned 5 years ago, hidden ever since. The realization washed over me like a wave, leaving me breathless but strangely buoyant. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. The next morning, the weight of that scanned file hadn't faded. I stared at it while the sun crept through the dusty blinds of my small apartment, illuminating the edges of my computer screen like it was some kind of divine spotlight. A beacon guiding me forward. The words were there, bold and formal, stamped and signed in my grandmother's careful pen. All intellectual property and preparatory curriculum created or co-developed with Evelyn Parker shall remain under her sole name. She had protected me quietly, legally, and my mother had ignored it completely. The betrayal stung afresh, but now it was tinged with something else, something like hope. As I sipped lukewarm coffee from a chipped mug, my phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. The second that morning, I didn't want to hear it, but my thumb hovered over the play button. Anyway, I was already spiraling. What's one more turn? Margaret's voice came through, softer this time. With that practiced maternal concern she reserved for public appearances. Oh, Evelyn, please. You can't just let the family fall apart. Your sister's career is hanging by a thread. Her voice cracked with what might have been genuine emotion, but I couldn't tell anymore. She said, the family, but I knew what she meant. Them, the ones who replaced my face in pictures. The ones who left my envelope in a drawer like a piece of trash. Then another voicemail. This one from Claire. Her voice cracked with panic, all pretense of control shattered. You're just bitter. You're always bitter. We gave you everything and this is how you repay us. Her voice rose with each word, the composure she showed her followers completely absent. I could almost see her pacing around in some pristine room, mascara trailing down her cheeks, blaming me like she always did. The familiar narrative playing out yet again. We gave you everything, she said. What a joke, I whispered into the silence, the words bitter on my tongue. You erased me and still expect me to be your savior. The irony wasn't lost on me. My hands were steady as I printed the will, the paper warm from the printer. No drama, no tears, just clarity and purpose filling me. I pinned it to the wall next to the email screenshot and the faded note from Grandma. One was typed, one was printed, one was written by hand. All of them told the same story. I'd been erased, and now they were demanding I paint myself back in just to fix their mess. The visual timeline of my erasure stared back at me. I stared at that wall for a long time, letting the evidence sink in. By lunch, I'd made up my mind. I looked up a lawyer in Austin who specialized in intellectual property and quietly booked a consultation. When I arrived, I brought the printout in a calm voice. My emotions carefully contained. I'm not asking to sue, I told her, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Not yet. I just want this documented, verified, and publicly filed. I want ownership to be formal and known. My hands didn't shake as I passed her the documents. The lawyer, a woman in her 50s named Victoria, raised an eyebrow after reading the will, her keen eyes assessing me over rimless glasses. You don't need a lawsuit to take back what's yours, she said, tapping the page with a manicured nail. You just need a notice, a clear, legally binding notice. The certainty in her voice felt like armor. I left her office with paperwork in hand, sunlight warming my back, and something inside me I hadn't felt in years. Control. The freedom of it made me stand taller, breathe deeper. But peace, that didn't last long. That night, there was a knock. 3 raps, firm, familiar. My heart jumped to my throat. I looked through the peephole and nearly stepped back in disbelief. Margaret, Richard, and Claire. The whole cavalry. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. We stood in the narrow hallway. The air felt sharp, like everything between us had hardened into glass. Ready to shatter if anyone raised their voice. Margaret looked exhausted. Her lipstick was faded. Her hands trembled, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against each other nervously. Richard said nothing. He never did. Claire's eyeliner was smudged, her usually immaculate appearance crumbling at the edges. Her curated shine was cracking and she knew it. For once, I felt like the steady one. We made mistakes, Margaret began, clasping her hands together like in prayer. We know, but family means forgiving. Her voice had that pleading quality I'd heard so many times before. I didn't blink. No, I said softly, the words small but powerful. Family meant not burning my letters. It meant opening my envelope. It meant saying my name in your family appreciation posts. I felt each word land with the weight of truth. Margaret looked down at her shoes, unable to meet my gaze. I turned to Claire. She met my gaze like a child who'd been caught but didn't know how to be sorry, defiance and fear battling in her eyes. This time I'm not the one fixing your mess, I told them. Stepping back, feeling stronger with each word. I'm fixing myself. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I simply closed it with a click and turned the lock. The sound was deafeningly final. Later that night, after showering off the tension and pouring myself some chamomile tea, I checked my email and froze. A bold red notification greeted me. Your professional site has been flagged and temporarily suspended due to multiple copyright violation claims. The words hit me like a physical blow. I clicked the details, my fingers suddenly clumsy. Someone, an anonymous IP, had filed claims against my own curriculum. My stomach twisted with fury and disbelief. They'd come back for me. Not with words, with paperwork. They tried to erase me one more time. But now I was ready. Now I knew exactly what I was fighting for. By the time I opened my eyes the next morning, the sky outside was already a dull grey. One of those mornings where light feels more like pressure than promise. I reached for my phone automatically, expecting the usual overnight tutoring emails or calendar pings. Instead, the first thing I saw was a red flag banner on my screen, glaring and urgent. Your website has been temporarily suspended due to a reported copyright violation. I sat up, heart pounding in my chest like a trapped bird. But my hands remained steady. A second notification followed, then a third. The subject lines were nearly identical. Urgent copyright claim review pending. At first I thought it was some glitch or bot, but when I clicked through and saw the claim details, my blood went cold. Proprietary content in use without consent. The audacity was breathtaking. There was no sender name, just an anonymized IP address tied to the complaint. But Victoria, my attorney, was already ahead of me. Within the hour she called, her voice calm but with an edge of steel. "It traces back to Claire's branding agency," she said flatly. "It's not a coincidence. It's a deliberate attempt to silence you." Her words confirmed what I already knew in my gut. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I took a deep breath that filled my lungs completely, opened a new folder on my desktop, and began methodically building my case. I took screenshots of every page, every time-stamped lesson, every outline, every diagram I'd created. I retrieved the PDF of my grandmother's will, highlighted the exact clause that secured the intellectual property. I even included early drafts I'd saved on a cloud backup, dated before Claire had even launched her academy. The evidence mounted with each click. I wrote the counterclaim with the tone of someone who had nothing left to prove and everything to protect. "I don't scream anymore," I typed to myself while organizing the files. My fingers flying across the keyboard. "E-document." The phrase became my mantra. That same afternoon, I sent an email not just to the board hosting my platform, but to all my tutoring clients and professional contacts. No dramatics, no accusations, just a clean, composed message that reflected the educator I'd become. "In light of recent confusion, please find attached original course materials, timestamps, development drafts, and my legal rights to the content as secured through notarized family documents. I appreciate your continued trust." My heart pounded as I hit send, but I felt no regret. A few replies rolled in within minutes. Most were supportive, outraged on my behalf. A few expressed surprise, but one message stopped me cold. A parent I had worked with the previous fall. A single mom from Houston wrote, "Your course saved my daughter's future. Don't let them take this from you. Your work matters." The words wrapped around my heart like a protective shield. That one I printed. I placed it next to the will on my wall. One paper born of blood, one born of effort. Together they meant something real. They formed a foundation I could build on. By evening, the storm had started brewing. This time, not mine. Claire posted a cryptic update on her main page. "People love to take credit once the hard work's done. Funny how that works?" The post dripped with false victimhood. But the internet wasn't buying it this time. Within the hour, someone, an intern she must have let go without a second thought, posted screenshots, timestamps, chat logs, even early Canva templates, all tied to me, all dating back years. The evidence was overwhelming. The comment section beneath Claire's post turned fast. "This looks like a textbook case of erasure. Wait, why is Evelyn not credited on anything? Y'all believe the family brand too easily." I watched in real time as her carefully constructed narrative crumbled. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Instead, I sat on my worn couch with a cup of peppermint tea, legs curled beneath me, laptop in my lap. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I felt still, strong, complete in a way I hadn't before. The warm mug between my palms anchored me in the moment. Then, just past 10 p.m., Victoria called again. "Evelyn," she said cautiously, "I don't want you to panic." The tone of her voice made my skin prickle with anticipation. I paused, heartbeat slowing to a steady rhythm. "Tell me," I said, bracing myself for whatever came next. "Claire's team just filed an emergency injunction. They're trying to block your site permanently." And she hesitated. "Your name is now being dragged in a Reddit thread that's gaining serious traction. They're painting you as the villain." Her concern was evident, but so was her determination. So this was their last swing. Not a conversation, not an apology, an ambush. I set down my mug carefully and looked at the papers on the wall. My evidence, my truth. This wasn't just personal anymore. It was public. And now it was war. My jaw set with resolve. The next morning, I didn't rush to check my inbox. I made coffee with deliberate movements. Let the kettle hiss and breathe, filling my kitchen with its comforting aroma. I took my time cracking the window, letting in just enough cold air to feel awake to clear my head. Only then did I open my laptop. The subject line was waiting. "Formal injunction filed. Cease and desist pending court review. The words glared back at me. Victoria had warned me. Still, seeing it in black and white knocked something loose inside me, a mixture of rage and determination flooding my system. It wasn't just a challenge to my work. It was a move meant to bury me completely. Below the message was a copy of the injunction. My name, my course, my students all temporarily frozen. My livelihood suspended with a single legal filing. Almost simultaneously, a viral Reddit thread was passed to me by a concerned student. At first I didn't click, but curiosity or maybe defiance got the better of me. My sister stole everything from me and turned our family against me. The username was generic, but the phrasing, it was textbook Claire. The narrative flipped completely. Now she was the victim. Now I was the jealous sister out for revenge. The theatre of it all was almost impressive. The comments were brutal, stabbing into me with each word. Wow. What kind of person does this to family? Ungrateful much. Can't believe some people will tear down their own blood over a little attention. The rush of being piled on by strangers who knew nothing of the truth made my stomach churn. I almost closed the page. Almost. Then I saw one comment near the bottom, barely visible among the attacks. Funny how the receipts always show up when the loud ones overplay their hand. It stopped me cold. It wasn't loud. It wasn't long, but it reminded me of something essential. I had the receipts, all of them. I had truth on my side. I didn't waste another second. I pulled up my webcam, kept the room dim, no makeup, no angles. Just me, raw and real, and I spoke, not with anger, not with apology, but with the clear voice of someone reclaiming their narrative. I placed the printed will in front of me. Read the paragraph aloud, the clause about ownership. I showed the signed page, then screen shared the original curriculum files, the drafts, the timestamps, the side-by-side comparison of her rebranded content, and finally the emails. The one from her agency, the one from her PR team, all with my name scrubbed out. When I finished, I looked directly into the lens, feeling a strength I hadn't known I possessed. They say silence is strength, I said quietly but firmly. But sometimes truth needs a voice. This is mine. I won't be erased from my own story. I didn't add music. No dramatic cut. I didn't ask for support or sympathy. I just clicked upload and let it go, releasing my truth into the world. My hands trembled slightly after, but with relief rather than fear. Within 2 hours, my phone didn't stop buzzing with notifications. Old clients shared the video. This woman helped my son pass his GED. She worked with my daughter when no one else would. She's the reason my kid got into college. Each testament felt like a brick in the foundation I was rebuilding. A teacher I'd collaborated with reposted my slides. A blogger I'd never met stitched the video on TikTok, praising the calm clarity. Even the Reddit moderators took action, labeling the original thread a misrepresentation and locking the comments. The tide was turning, truth breaking through. Something was shifting, slowly but undeniably. Late that night, I got a voicemail from my mother. Her voice was low, not performative, just tired, stripped of its usual polish. We're sorry. Not for everything. Maybe not yet, but for now. For letting it happen. You didn't deserve that, Evelyn. The words I'd waited years to hear finally came, but they felt hollow, too little, too late. She didn't ask me to call back, and I didn't. That part of me, the one that wanted to hear those words since I was 9 years old, standing on that stool at church, didn't jump. It didn't reach. It just listened and let it settle. Some apologies come too late to heal what was broken. A few hours later, there was a knock on my door. No one I knew had said they were coming. I opened it slowly, cautiously. A delivery man stood there holding a small box and a clipboard, looking bored. Certified, he said. Signature required. He thrust the pen toward me. I signed, closed the door, sat on the edge of my bed, and peeled back the seal with careful fingers. Inside was a single envelope, legal-sized cream paper from Claire's lawyer. I opened it and read, proposed settlement agreement enclosed, confidentiality required, full rights and name restoration in exchange for non-disparagement. My heart pounded as I understood what I was holding. They were offering a deal, a silent end, a trade. My silence for my rights, but they were wrong about one thing. Silence didn't protect them anymore. It just bought my answer. The check didn't tremble in my hands. It was heavy. 6 figures worth of forgive and forget, the price they put on erasing me again. But my fingers stayed steady as I unfolded the NDA behind it. Withdraw all claims, delete the video, never speak publicly again. It was the kind of offer that came dressed as resolution but stank of control. I read it twice. Once as a woman who had spent too many years second-guessing herself, doubting her own worth. Then again as the woman I'd become, no longer looking for permission to be heard. The contrast between these two readings told me everything I needed to know. And then I walked to my shredder, slid in the papers and listened as the blades turned their silence into dust. The sound was satisfying, final. That afternoon I posted my final statement. No video this time, just a still image, my name, my credentials, and the words, "You don't owe people silence just because they shared your last name. I won't take hush money for pain I never caused." I felt lighter after hitting post, unburdened. By nightfall, it was everywhere. Women from all over, former educators, daughters who'd been gaslit out of inheritances, sisters who knew the sting of being scapegoated began sharing it. Not for sympathy, but because it named something they couldn't say themselves. One message read, "I thought I was the only one. Thank you for saying what I couldn't." The connection to strangers who understood my pain was healing in a way family never was. In my new home office, where I no longer needed to ask for a chair at the table, I hung the wrinkled paper I'd carried since that motel room. "You will build what no one sees today." Eleanor's words watched over me as I worked. It rested beside the official letter from my lawyer. Ownership affirmed, IP registered, curriculum protected. The juxtaposition of personal and professional victory wasn't lost on me. The desk was modest, solid oak with a few scratches that gave it character. The window overlooked a bus stop, but it was mine. Completely undeniably mine. I haven't heard from my family since. Not on birthdays. Not when Claire's site was permanently shut down. Not when word spread that Mom had quietly sold the house. Some said it was to cover the legal fallout. Others whispered she just had enough. I didn't seek out these rumors. They found me anyway. But I didn't wait for gossip. I didn't need apologies printed in ink or whispered through other people's mouths. They weren't monsters, just people who made me wince when it was easier than looking in the mirror. I didn't fight to punish them. I fought to free myself. The distinction mattered more than they would ever understand. And freedom? It's quieter than I imagined, but not empty. It's filled with purpose and possibility. Last month, I launched a small scholarship fund in my grandmother's name. Nothing flashy, just enough to help kids like the ones I used to tutor when I barely had rent money. Each application I read reminds me of why I started this journey. Thank you notes started coming in, flooding my inbox with gratitude. Most were from strangers. One was from a student I taught back when I was working out at the public library. "You were the first one who told me I could do it. I believed you because you believed in me." The words brought tears to my eyes, happy ones this time. I sat with that letter for a long time. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. Because it represented everything I'd fought for. This was the life I built in the silence they once thought would bury me. Each brick laid with purpose, each foundation stone set with intention. A few days ago, I printed a second copy of my grandmother's note. I folded it into an envelope, feeling Eleanor's presence guiding my hands. No return address, no message. Just those words, "You will build what no one sees today." I mailed it to a girl I once tutored who'd quietly told me her parents thought she was too much, who'd been told to stop dreaming so loud. I recognized myself in her downcast eyes. Because maybe one day she'll find herself alone in a motel room and maybe those words will do for her what they did for me. Light a path forward. Remind her that even when others try to erase you, you can write yourself back into existence. One word, one day, one student at a time.